making a documentary about Scientology is the overabundance of material. Because there's just so many ways to come in on it, and you can just chase intriguing leads, and then months go by, and you're no nearer to filming anything.
I had a lot of thoughts on this, and one of the thoughts when I was really trying to unpack it all is that I feel like one of the reasons why a lot of these people defend Scientology, I think there's several reasons. One, because it's their team, and once you become a part of a team, it becomes something that you identify with, it becomes very important to you, and then you want to defend that. So I think there's that. But also, I think some people take some benefit in what L. Ron Hubbard created. Because have you read Going Clear?
Yes.
When I read Going Clear, I watched the documentary and then I read the book. And one of the things that was more fascinating about the book was the fact that he was essentially trying to diagnose and treat himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he was essentially a really nutty guy.
He was very damaged.
Yeah, he had a lot going on. And he was a guy who was trying to sort of sort it out himself, and in the process brought a lot of people in and then created this thing. And some people, they get some benefit from this thing. Because like I was watching like some of these people that are upset with you, like that woman, there's a trailer where this woman was upset at you because you were in, I haven't seen the documentary yet, it comes out in America in January, but you were on a road that you had a permit for, and she was telling you were on private land. And
that's right.
I'm looking at this woman, I'm like, seems like a reasonable, intelligent, assertive, confident woman that would probably, if she didn't get into Scientology, she would have been successful in the corporate world, right?
I'm sure.
But here she is, her corporation is written by a nutty science fiction writer who wrote more fiction than any human that's ever walked the face of the planet.
Yes.
He made up more shit. He wrote down more things that never happened than anyone who's ever lived. And they don't have a problem with that. They're like...
I mean, you've said about 10 different things that I could break down and analyze. I mean, I'm basically on the same page as you. I think there's... The first thing to acknowledge about Scientology is that it's a religion, and that all religions have a very high portion of, I'm trying to put it politely, but just bogus, fallacious, clearly nonsensical material, right? And Scientology is the same as all of those. I think there's a lot of people who've derived a lot of benefit from Scientology. I think there's people whose lives have been saved by it. Kirstie Alley will say at any opportunity that it was Scientology that got her off drugs. But I think you have to sort of take the whole package. And as far as Hubbard goes, he was an only child. He was a fantasist, a lonely guy who was also a narcissist. And I think as a writer, I mean, you can't. One of the intriguing things about Scientology is created by a sci-fi writer, right? There's not most other religions are created by sort of desert mystics or warriors or introspective people, but a modern day sci-fi writer who's writing things about aliens taking over foreign galaxies. that accounts for a lot of its very bizarre inflection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, not only that, I don't think he wrote a second draft ever.
No. He didn't have time. He was just churning it out. I think a lot of the stuff that they say he wrote, he didn't write, because he was married 3 times, and at least one of his wives took credit for writing some of his stuff. I think even some stuff of Scientology may be written by his second wife, who he subsequently disavowed, said he was never married to. But the guy was he lied about so many things. He was also abusive to his wives, I think plural. So physically, he was abusive to them. He was very, very troubled and suicidal. One of the most intriguing things in Going Clear is reading this list of I think they called them affirmations, which when he was in, after the Second World War, he was racked with self-doubt. He thought he was a failure. He was embarrassed about his sexual urges, his compulsive masturbation, and so on and so forth. And he wrote down a list of things. Do you remember this section of it where it says, you do not feel compelled to masturbate 24 times a day. I mean, it's not literally that. It was like,
right.
You were not a disgrace to the military. You acquitted your service in the Navy very creditably. It was all these sort of lies he was telling himself to reassure himself that he was actually, to feel okay about himself. It's a very humanizing document because you just see all his neurotic inclinations laid bare that then subsequently informed his lifelong attempt to, as you say, sort of therapeutically heal himself.
And I think there's other people that identify with those self sort of damaged thoughts. These thoughts where they don't like their past, they don't like who they are, they don't like the pattern that they're on, and they seek to try to change that and improve upon their position, improve upon their understanding and their acceptance of themselves. And I think that's where Scientology does benefit a lot of people. And so it is tricky, like many things in this life. It's not that black and white. I mean, is it black and white that it's a cult and that there's a lot of damaging aspects of that? Yes, absolutely. It's pretty clear. When you see the people that have tried to leave it and and tell the truth about their experiences in it and how they've been harassed and hounded, and yeah, that's all pretty black and white. But I think we can, in some ways, we can sympathize with some of the people that are in it. And,
big time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but the other thing to say is, because you started by asking what was it that made some people defend Scientology, and is it loyalty to their team? But I also think that on the outer periphery, like there are concentric rings of commitment to Scientology, and in the inner circle, it is extremely demanding and I would argue abusive and cult-like. On the outer circles, as you get further from the center, I think it can be relatively benign, and especially if you're a VIP or a celebrity in which you're exposed only to the best sorts of treatment. You're given kind of platinum card treatment. You go to the celebrity center, they roll out the red carpet for you, and I think those people feel immensely indebted to Scientology. I think that explains a lot about Tom Cruise. That he's only ever been treated like a prince when he's been in Scientology. So he feels so grateful for everything that they've done for him.
Yeah, I think his experience, when he talks about them, if he's being honest, I mean, if everyone had that experience, Scientology would be amazing. You know, when you see him, when they had the happy birthday thing for him and he's dancing and everybody's cheering, like imagine if people treated you like that all the time.
Oh, my goodness. Auditioning actors, like female actors, to see if they were going to be your girlfriend. Did you read that whole? I mean, imagine if they rounded up the most attractive young female actors in Hollywood to see whether they would go on a date with you.
Yeah.
That would make life very simple. If you weren't married, as I am.
Would it, though? Would it?
Know,
God, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just you're dealing with a bunch of nutty people that are willing to go through that process.
Yeah, and actually, because it would be like almost King Midas thing where you wouldn't trust any of your instincts. You would feel as though people were erecting Potemkin villages everywhere you went. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Nothing would feel quite real.
Right. That's a good point. Also, like, imagine your wife today, if you found out that your wife today was one of the people that had auditioned to be Tom Cruise's wife. I mean, if you don't make the cut, you're damaged goods for the rest of your life.
That's interesting.
You're a nutty broad who is willing to go and sign up to become Tom Cruise's new wife.
Well, to be fair, they didn't know that was the job they were going in for.
Right, to be fair, yeah, that's true.
So
they were just being...
They just thought they were up for some gig. I mean, do you know what I mean? Maybe a sitcom or something.
Well, essentially they were. I mean, and then there's also all of the... This is a difficult thing to skirt around, but the Scientology treatment of homosexuals, where they sort of shield them from the press or hide their activity and sort of... Do you know what a beard is?
I do.
Yeah. They hire beards.
That's a great point. And I think actually that's another one that, I guess we as a society have evolved a lot over the last 50 years. To some extent, Hubbard was a creature of his times in his attitudes towards homosexuality. The trouble is, because they're saying it's a religion, that's been enshrined as scripture. And so there is L. Ron Hubbard scripture that dictates that homosexuals, gays, are perverts. They're 1.1 on the tone scale, which is the same as journalists, oddly enough, but it's very, very low. Basically, you are a kind of broken, deceitful, devious character.
Journalists are 1.1 on the tone scale?
Same as perverts. And actually, I think quite explicit. I mean, I could go down, and that explains a lot about why it's so hard to make a documentary, in practical terms, why they don't cooperate with documentaries. They just see you as a pervert, someone who's dedicated to to the abasement of humanity, in essence, someone who's holding humanity back from being what it should be.
That's just incredible that he's managed to define journalist under that category. The very people that we rely upon to investigate the truth and express that truth and disseminate that truth to the general public, those people are perverts.
And that's scripture as well. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can argue against it in their. I mean, one of the big things they're up against is any attempt. Most kind of malfunctioning regimes, whether it's a corporate entity or something else, you say this isn't working. Let's try something else. So much of what happened in Scientology. This was explained to me by one of our sources in the film, a guy called Marty Rathbun, who was very high up in Scientology. He said something could be working extremely badly inside Scientology, but if it came out of Hubbard, then you couldn't really change it. Hubbard apparently once said, the best way to wash windows is using vinegar. Don't use Windex, use vinegar. And because of that, whenever they washed windows in the Sea Org, in the inner sanctums of Scientology, they had to use vinegar because Hubbard said that was how you were supposed to do it. And nothing can be changed. It's a bit like Mormons. I mean, now Mormons, I don't know how they got around it. They say, you don't have to be polygamous. But it's like turning an aircraft carrier around. If it comes from, basically, if it's gospel, then how do you reform? God's changed his mind is basically what you have to say.
Well, that is the real problem with religion. Because we all recognize that no one person has ultimate truth. And especially when you're just going through this life trying to figure out yourself, trying to figure out what is this all about, this strange spinning ball that's floating in the sky and we're hurling through infinity, and what is the purpose of this existence? And there's a lot of open-ended questions that never have any answers. So when someone comes along and they have this rigid ideology where things are very clearly defined, you must ask, who is defining these things? Who is this person that is beyond reproach? And when that person is a yellow-toothed weirdo that's dressed like a captain with some medals that he put himself on his own jacket, and he's a science fiction author who wrote more bullshit than any human being has ever read, and wrote bad books. I mean, he's a bad writer.
I haven't read any of his fiction. I've tried to read Dianetics several times. It's almost unreadable in my view. Have you tried to read Dianetics?
I bought Dianetics once, a late night before the internet. There was a late night infomercial. I've always been a person who's really into self-help and psychology.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
because I've always tried to figure out what is it about? Why do people sabotage themselves? Why do I get lazy? Why do I not fulfill some of my goals? And so I really got into Anthony Robbins, and I got into a lot of psychology books and self-help books. And one night I was at home and I was watching this commercial for Dianetics. So I said, all right, I'm going to call this. And I called, and I guess I gave my credit card number or whatever it was. And
this is while you were an actor at this point.
I was a working actor,
quite successful.
Yeah, I was. They would okay.
If they saw you coming, they would have absolutely. That would have made their year.
Well, I never went in. Okay. I never went there. But I did, in the future, I did do the e-meter thing, but that was way later. So this is 1994, when I just first came to Hollywood. And, I was alone in my apartment in North Hollywood, probably lonely, trying to figure things out. Just got here. I want to buy this fucking thing. Those people sent me pamphlets and paperwork and invitations to seminars and this thing and that thing for a decade. I mean, it just never ended. It was weekly, monthly, constant. They're very, very relentless in their pursuit. And if you looked at what their pamphlets were saying, it was all really reasonable, enticing stuff. It was all about improving yourself. It was all about fulfilling your goals, eliminating negative thoughts, eliminating other people's negative thoughts that are influencing the way you view your life, eliminating the effect of past experiences that were negative and that may have defined you in some way.
Yeah, all of that, and then but that's basically Freud. Basically,
Yeah.
It's Freud with a lie detector. When you're hooked up to a lie detector, that in essence is auditing. The problem is when you read Dianetics, you realize it's how loopy it is, in my view, and in fact. Because sometimes, and I praise this sort of skeptical-minded approach where people say, well, what's your problem with Scientology? You know, all religions are kooky. But the fact is just Exhibit A is just read Dianetics. If you read the Bible, it's got loony stuff in it, but it's got passages of transcendent poetry and just parables that you could meditate on and beautifully written, in the translated English. You read Dianetics, and it's just childish stuff about literally things about, a lot of your problems may be because when you are in utero,